First off, I have an announcement to make about our upcoming classes. Well, from tomorrow onwards, it is our Dharma Assembly of Kshitigarbha practice. So for all of you who are here present, the practice actually starts from 7 all the way to 12, and there's a 1 hour break in between. And then in the afternoon, it begins around 2 o'clock and then ends at 5. Also has a 1 hour break in between, which is very similar to the Vajrasattva Dharma Assembly. So for those of you who are participating in this Dharma Assembly, then I encourage you to chant the Kshitigarbha as a mantra, as well as the Samattabhadra's aspiration to all good actions. It lasts for 7 days. Originally, I was going to then cancel the class for day after tomorrow, but I then thought about maybe give a teaching on how to practice, or just very simple teaching, which will take probably around 45 minutes. That starts around 8 p.m. We probably won't have a whole chanting, or just very simple chanting, such as praise to Manjushri. And for a short 30 to 45 minutes, I will talk about how to become a genuine Buddhist practitioner. Because many of you just recently started of becoming a Buddhist, and none of you, probably not many of you, have considered what's the occupation of Buddhist yet. What kind of Buddhist you want to become, Hinayana or Mahayana? During my encountering with you, when you come up over here to see me, I feel that if I were to give such a talk, it would be very beneficial to you. Therefore, I added it very spontaneously. We imagine that Buddhists understood lots of Buddhist teachings and Buddhism doctrines, but maybe that's not the case. For lots of beginners, lots of people who recently entered onto the path of Buddha Dharma, they probably haven't really got a chance to understand what Buddhism is yet. Of course, for those of you who already are then Buddhists, long-time Buddhists, you don't necessarily to join this class, but of course you're very welcome to join it as well. It wasn't planned, but I spontaneously had this thought of giving teaching. So that's on August 3rd. We don't have class on the 4th. And then August 5th, August 6th, I will give the teaching of the 7 points of training, of the mind training. And later parts, then I'll think about it, and we'll see what classes we'll have later on. So in terms of Uttara Tantra Shastra, we will then have the week after next week, which is the 15th of August, we'll resume the teaching of Uttara Tantra Shastra. On next Monday and Tuesday, we will have, the week after, on the Monday and Tuesday, we will have Vimalakirti Sutra, and then Thursday, Friday, we will then have Uttara Tantra Shastra, and on 17th of August, we'll start the teaching of Wu and Yu, which is the analytics of Confucius. Well, we've started lots of projects. Hopefully, we'll end them well. We should feel quite diligent, which is a kind of enthusiasm. Sometimes I do feel tired both mentally and physically, and as much as I want to be enthusiastic, it may not be that easy. I'm not sure if we'll have the book ready by then. In fact, in the first half of the year, I've already announced that I'm going to teach on the Luanyu. Many people thought that it's very easy to understand, but in fact, there are points it could be quite difficult. Lots of professionals don't even understand, academics don't even understand and can't explain it properly. So why don't we just study it together? A lot of people told me that after studying the traditional cultural studies, they felt it was very beneficial and some new insights arose. Therefore, why don't we study and resume this teaching? I, in fact, have this homework that I inflicted on my own because our habitual pattern would tell us don't do anything, but if we don't have any kind of inspiration, any new projects, then we'll just continue to be lazy. Therefore, I myself made this homework for myself. And then in the later part, hopefully by September, we'll start the teaching of Shuragama Sutra. I will then ask them to prepare for the textbook for you. The Shuragama Sutra will start after Vimalakirti Sutra. For those of you who don't have any means to get the text, don't complain, because during my time, we had to copy it by hand. We have to write before the second day's class. So nowadays, it's much easier. You can copy it from online. I'm going to give the oral transmission at the very beginning. I will then read the oral transmission all together rather than how I used to chant it before each of the explanation. I think maybe because people were really lazy to listen to the rest of the teaching, they'll just run away and log out of the internet after listening to the oral transmission and not interested in listening to the teaching. Maybe they're too lazy, but anyhow, I will do it anyways. Originally, I thought it would be a good interval for a rest, but today I'll give it at the beginning.
Renchen namka chetag jin artagda ramjin nyumo meda chumo lagba sherab dang dangzan nyangzi lipshon wa tadang janda manjir dang lambingo ramjin shir dana nubra renchen ka chi yondan chumtan nyet chula kongcho udagta dang cho korbar dungar jinjig ba semchin ton la tume nyet ndochin martag nyanto dang ramshon namji dribnam je tagje lagbar muba la sogbi chunar namje nyed tangchug muba sawun sherab na sangje chukit madang sangtan ji devi mgarne nyarji mama chan gangyan de dag thubar jiti ji sangde dag de dang tagni di yondan baru chunri Chinban J, Dungar, Yuzin, Jutup, Dundang Mombi, Legion, no. Chemian,
Well, I give blessings for everyone for an hour. And I feel a bit tired. And if I'm tired, then you probably won't be so energetic either. Delicious. I'll save it for later. So let's continue with the Uttara Tantra Shastra. Well, right now we're learning the second chapter, or rather the first chapter that is stated over here, and that is the Buddha Nature chapter. The previous stanza that we studied last class was very important stanza, and I ask you to recite it, especially for those of you who have the after-class presentation and the after-class discussion group. So let's see who's the lucky person get to present it in front of everyone. Now we get to then study the part where it talks about the general explanation of the characteristics, which has 10 points. We often talk about how all sentient beings has Buddha nature, but how? Many people don't really understand. From the reasons, from the points of, from the angle of wisdom that derives from listening, contemplating, and practice. And many people are familiar and interested in the emptiness aspect, which is the second turning of the Dharma wheel of Shakyamuni Buddha. But when it comes to the third turning, when it talks about luminosity, how sentient beings to Buddhahood all have such luminosity. No one really understands. Not many people actually understand. How do all sentient beings have such Buddha nature? And not many people, in fact, studied it systematically. I know that many people have a deep faith. And you probably understand that we're sentient. We're not insentient. And we have Buddha nature. And Buddha nature is not so simple, just simple words saying that everyone has Buddha nature. Unlike some other religions, they would say something very simple and present it in a very easy sentences, and that's it. It's not like that at all. In fact, the Buddha nature is so profound, therefore, we will explain it from different angles. So this stanza that we're studying today is that essence, cause, fruit, function, endowment, manifestation, phases, all pervasiveness of suchness, unchangingness, and inseparability, and qualities should be understood as intended to describe the meaning of absolute expanse. So today we'll talk about the essence, cause, fruit, all of these qualities that was stated before. So in total there were 10. And from these 10 points or 10 aspects of Buddha nature, you can contemplate or reflect upon your own. Think about whether you considered Buddha nature in such a way beforehand, before learning this part. the previous stanza, it talks about the Buddha nature or the disposition and so on, all of these. In fact, the essence of this Buddha nature is pure. We cannot see. This is a nature that we cannot see. We cannot test it and prove it to be existent. However, according to the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, where it says that it is as when one cannot see the new moon, and yet one cannot say that there is no moon. The same is the case with Buddha nature. All beings may not be able to see it, yet we cannot say that there is no Buddha nature. Without seeing, without being able to perceive it, the nature is existent. And later on, it will talk also about the reasons. It talks about the 4 reasons or 4 causes that could then purify the defilement that's covered on the Buddha nature. Over here, the cause doesn't really talk about the cause of Buddha nature. Rather, it's a cause of rediscover your Buddha nature. And then the second point talks about the fruition. In fact, over here, it talks about the fruit. That is the fruit that is then devoid of all the adventitious defilement. What is the fruition? The fruition then is something that that you can rediscover after the adventitious defilement are purified. The next one talks about the action or function rather. It talks about the function that when you see the suffering of samsara, you will have a sense of renunciation, a mind to renounce. Then that is the function. And when you see the merit, or when you get to know the merit of nirvana, then you want to attain nirvana. So that is the function of our Buddha nature. The next one, the 5th one, is endowment, or the kind of merits, such as the merits of trust or faith, which is the merit of cause, and the merits of fruition, which is like known as penetration. The next one is the 6th one. It talks about entry or approach. What kind of Dharma, Buddha nature could make you enter or approach to, that is then enter into the different types of the Dharma, the different thusness. And then the 7th one talks about phase, or different categorizations, which has 3 phases. The first one is not pure, second one is Bodhisattva's phase, and the third one is Buddha's phase. And the first one, when it talks about not pure, is mundane people's phase. And then the 8th one talks about all pervasiveness. The pervasiveness is that the Buddha nature is all pervasive in Dharma Dhatu. Just as you have Buddha nature and Bodhisattvas have Buddha nature, and same as Buddhas have Buddha nature. All sentient beings have Buddha nature, therefore it is all pervasive. That's the 8th. And then the 9th one talks about unchangingness. Buddha nature does not change. Buddha nature does not change because you are a mundane being and your Buddha nature has defilement, or it doesn't change when it reaches to the Buddhahood. In fact, Buddha nature is unchanging. It doesn't have coming or going. And the 10th one talks about non-dual.
在最后就是佛体的时候所得到的这些端正公道的话呢，就是我们现在因地的时候也是万物界的方式存在的啊，就并不是我们到后来的时候呢，好像突然从那个天上掉下了一个公道，然后就是站在我的这个身上，就是当他翻菩提一直到菩提之间的话呢，他的所有的
In fact, all the merit is not different than when you are at mundane beings stage. So it has never changed. It has no difference. It has not separated of the qualities. Those are the 10 kinds of points of Buddha nature. So from the 10 points, you should be able to understand Buddha nature. This time when we study Uttara Tantra Shastra, I think we should place our importance or focus at recognize Buddha nature. We talk about Buddha nature all the time, but have we really understood what Buddha nature is? When people ask you what is Buddha nature, then you can present these 10 points to them. And maybe after you finish teaching the 10 points, they will get even more confused. Especially for some very not professional ones, they love asking questions. And when it comes to the very profound teachings of Buddha Dharma, you cannot simply put Buddha nature in simple sentences. Of course, we're not trying to make them confused. But when you're trying to explain something like this that is so profound, then you should follow the teachings of Maitreya so that you will be able to explain Buddha nature During the studying of Dharma, many people get very confused about the meaning of life. They would ask, what's the meaning of living? What's the meaning of life? Lots of young people ask me this question. And at this point, if you understand what Buddha nature is, then you will be able to understand without posing such question. The apple that I had, which was the fruit of a mundane being, now this fruit that I'm having is the bodhisattva's fruition. The previous one was the previous fruit I had was non-defilement. Was defiled, and this one I'm having is non-defiled. The last one I'm going to have is going to be extremely pure fruition, which is the fruition of Buddhahood. I feel a little tired today. Okay, so let's continue. The previous one was the brief explanation, general explanation, and then this one, the next one talks about the detailed classification, detailed explanation, which has 8. The first one talks about the essence and cause together. Second one talks about the fruition and the function together. Therefore, although it is listed or classified as 8, it actually has 10 points. Let's look at the first stanza, which then talks about that is to be purified and the means of purification, and then talk about the differences of its essence separately. So the first talks about that is to be pacified, which is Buddha nature's essence, and the means of purification is the cause. During studying this, I really hope that you could spend time to contemplate, to think about what is the essence of Buddha nature, and think about what's the cause of Buddha nature. The cause is called the means of purification, and that is to be purified is Buddha nature. So this is how it's listed over here. The stanza says, just as a jewel, the sky, the water are pure, it is by nature always free from poisons, from devotion to the Dharma, from highest wisdom, and from samadhi and compassion's realization arises. So over here it has three metaphors. The first metaphor is a jewel, a muni or wish-fulfilling jewel is pure by nature. The space is naturally pure, and the water is naturally pure. Same to all those three metaphors, the nature or the essence of Buddha nature is also pure. That those first two sentences of the stanza talks about that is to be purified, which is Buddha nature's essence, and the second one talks. The second part of the stanza talks about means to be purified. This part has profound teaching, profound meaning. Unlike some people, when they give speech, they just speak whatever. But over here, lots of profound meaning is stated within short sentences. So over here, let's look at what it talks about. So the first part talks about to have faith. That is the reason or the cause to have Buddha nature. And the second one is to realize or to attain the wisdom of emptiness. That is also a nature. That is also a cause of Buddha nature. So that's the second reason, which is the non-dual wisdom. First of all, you have to have faith. Faith is not enough. The second one is to have the wisdom of selflessness, of no self. And the third one talks about samadhi, which is meditative absorption. Because if you don't have meditative absorption, then your mind is always wavering. Then you won't be able to continue to practice for a long term. There are many kinds of samadhi. So samadhi is the third reason. And the fourth reason is to generate great compassion towards all sentient beings. And through these four reasons or four causes, you'll be able to then unreveal the Buddha nature. Just like a piece of crystal, once you clear and polish all the defilements on top of it, then you'll be able to see the clear crystal. Just like that, you will be able to rediscover Buddha nature once you have these four causes. Just like the jewel is already pure, then you still have to clear it and so that you'll be able to see its clear nature. The nature of space is also pure. There's nothing that could defile it. The water is pure. It does not mix with the defilements. Similarly, the wisdom you have to have a wisdom, faith, and samadhi as well as compassion to be able to then attain fruition, which is enlightenment. So for the Mahayana practitioners, we should have all of these four causes to attain enlightenment. That is faith, wisdom, samadhi, and compassion. These four are extremely important. I really hope that you can memorize and keep it in your heart. After attaining it, then the Bodhisattva's fruition will be able to appear, and the fruition of eradicating fetters. And over here, we'll talk about this fruition in the later part. The second part then talk about the previous one. It talks about the general explanation of the essence and the cause of Buddha nature. And then the second part is the detailed explanation. I hope you could look at, I really hope that you could look at all of these classifications or outline of the stanzas, otherwise you won't be able to understand. So you should have the kind of attitude to study, just like those ones need to do exams after. You should study the Dharma like the yak is only focused on the green grass placed in front of him. When we are studying the Dharma, we have to have the same enthusiasm, the same kind of longing, and we should dive into every aspect of the teaching, such as the outline of the general outline, the detailed explanation, and understand each stanzas and the logics between them. The ones with high capacity, they are very focused from the beginning to the end. The Dharma students who have the middle capacity, they listen from the beginning and get distracted at the end. And the ones of lower capacity, then they fall asleep right at the beginning of the class. So think about what kind of capacity you have. The second one, from the outline, it talks about the detailed explanation or the meaning of the essence and meaning of cause. In fact, I think from this you'll be able to see that Maitreya, Lord Maitreya, is really good at dividing, and all of this kind of classification is very clearly stated. The logic is infallible. So this one over here, it talks about the meaning of that is to be purified, which is Buddha nature. Over here it talks about then the power not changing into something else, and being a nature that has a moistened quality. These three have properties corresponding to those of a precious gem, the sky and water. In the previous ones, we've already studied that. In the previous class, we've already talked about the threefold logics to understand that how sentient beings have Buddha nature and have this constant and unchanging Buddha nature. And over here, it talks about the power aspect, the power of the wish-fulfilling jewel. As long as you praise and supplicate and pray to the wish-fulfilling jewel, make aspiration and make a wish to the wish-fulfilling jewel, then the wish-fulfilling jewel has power to fulfill your wish. Lots of scientists don't understand what Buddha nature is. In fact, Buddha nature is just like that wish-fulfilling jewel. From our Buddha nature, if you want to study Buddha Dharma, you'll be able to study Buddha Dharma. If you want to study worldly Dharma, you'll be able to study worldly Dharma. There are defilements or something that would cover will be able to cover some of the abilities. So sometimes it will be a little difficult, but you'll still be able to study it. For example, if I were to start studying English, I'll be able to study it. If I were to invest my time to study Japanese, I'll be able to study it and speak it. So the Buddha nature is just like a treasure trove. Whatever you dig out of it, whatever you try to dig, you'll be able to find it. And of course, the skandhas are different, and the different capacities are different based on different people, but the Buddha nature is the same. And if right now your faculties are rather dull. Once you change to a different body, you'll be able to study or be able to attain some of the aspect of the Buddha nature, whatever you want to discover. The next one, the example or the metaphor, it talks about the space. And the space is all pervasive, so that's the essence. And then it is then changeless, and that is the nature of space. The next one talks about the nature of water, or the disposition of water is moist. Therefore, the Buddha nature is exactly the same. That is the disposition of all sentient beings. Water has the nature of moist. Similarly, Buddha nature has such nature that's all pervasive to all sentient beings. So Buddha nature has the merit of so Buddha nature has the disposition of power, has the disposition of not changing, and the disposition of compassion and wisdom. That is the nature of Buddha nature. So that is a disposition of Buddha nature. From this aspect, we'll be able to understand what the Lotus Sutra, within Lotus Sutra, there was a bodhisattva whose name was Bodhisattva Never Disparaging, and he said that he's not there to disparage anyone, and we'll be able to understand why he's talking about not disparaging anyone's inherent Buddha nature from such an aspect. In the Mahayana Dharmadhatu without distinction Shastra, it says that just as a raging fire at the end of times is unable to burn space, this Dharmadhatu is not burnt by the fire of old age, illness, and death. Within samsara of birth, old age, sickness, and death, sentient beings experience all kinds of suffering, all kinds of pain. But it doesn't matter how much you suffer, such suffering will not burn your Buddha nature. This is taught in the Mahayana Dharmadhatu without distinction Shastra. It was very detailedly explained. In our life, you probably experienced some personal or within the community and some changes of your mentality, of your emotions. Even your emotions would differ from morning and afternoon. Sometimes you feel saddened out of no reason. Sometimes you would feel there's no hope. There's a sense of hopelessness. But for practitioners, once you see that our Buddha nature was never changing and all pervasive, then whatever changes in your external and in your inner changes, it won't harm you. Once we recognize that this is our nature, this is our essence, then you'll be able to see such non-increasing and non-decreasing, non-coming and non-going aspect, and such nature of your Buddha nature. This is not just because I'm copycatting the teachings from the book. And I suggest you not to do that either. I really suggest you to look at your own mind and to see your nature of your mind, so that you'll be able to see, so that you'll be able to have a glimpse what your nature is. This is extremely important. According to Pamasambhava, he said, Once you understand the nature, even if you're a yak herder, you'll be able to get liberated. Without understanding the nature of your mind, even a pandita who's well studied will not be able to get liberated. People get really confused when we study Buddha nature. But for people who have even a single small glimpse of Buddha nature, they have more and deep faith in this Tathagarbha. The essence is already intrinsic, existing in all sentient beings. You don't have to go to each one and ask, do you have the 10 points of the Tathagarbha? You don't need to ask if this person has it or the other person has it. You just need to understand that you have that, and the same as all sentient beings. We were talking about that is to be purified, which is the essence of Buddha nature. Do you know? Do you understand? If you do, then you can come up and give an oral presentation. The other day someone said, yes, I understood, and then he was so nervous when he was giving the oral presentation. His glasses kept on falling down. Buddha nature. Okay, so next one. This kind of essence of Buddha nature, how can we then rediscover, or what's the cause of rediscovering this Buddha nature? Over here, then we are going to learn the means of purification. The first one talks about to eradicate the 4 kinds of obstacles. And the way the 4 veils to be abandoned are given up. And this over here it talks about enmity towards the Dharma, a view ascertaining an existing self, fear of samsara suffering, and neglect of the welfare of fellow beings are the 4 veils of those with great desire. So the first one talks about the enmity, and then grasping on existing self. That's the second one. Third one is fear of samsara suffering, and the fourth one talks about neglect the welfare of all the other sentient beings. So those are the 4 veils. And who are the 4 kinds of people who then give up? Then they are the they are the ones who have a great view of great desire, and then Tirtikas, who are the heretics, and Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas. Then what are the ways to become an heir of victorious ones by means of an antidote? What are the 4 antidotes? Antidotes is devotion and wisdom, as well as meditative stability or samadhi, and then compassion. And later on, in the next stanza, we'll study that. Over here, it talks about the desire, the one with. Over here, the first one talks about enmity or anger or aggression. In fact, aggression is something that is very detrimental. Many practitioners who studied for a decade or 2, but at the moment when they have anger, they completely consumed in the fire of aggression. On one hand, it could be the arrogance. On on one hand, it could be ignorance. But from any aspect, you won't be able to give rise to the devotion to the Mahayana path and to the Buddha Dharma or to the Guru. So if you really want to see and really want to understand what Buddha nature is, then you have to eradicate the root of enmity. And who is the one that usually have great aggression? It is then the Ichantikas, or the ones who have a great desire towards existence. In fact, in Ichantika, they talk about two types of people who within Ichantika. Ichantika are the ones who have great desire towards existence, and there is one kind who have already eradicated their own good roots to attain liberation. And then the other kind is the bodhisattva who do not search for or do not pursue Buddhahood at the level or at the state of bodhisattva.
就是应该对大乘佛法就一至三知识，然后对大乘佛法呢就是闻思修行，然后呢
So you have to then study Mahayana path and then generate great faith, and then you'll be able to eradicate the four obstacles. Anger, aggression is the fire that would burn all your good roots. In Hinayana teaching, it is the most detrimental affliction, and in Mahayana, it is also the affliction that would destroy your merits, because it comes from selfishness, just as the Ichantika that has already eradicated all the good roots. For the kind of people who do not have a very tamed mind stream, the kind of people have to then practice in Mahayana path and slowly transform their mind stream and their sense of self-grasping. Then they will be able to then see their Buddha nature. The next one talks about grasping on a view of existing self. Usually those are the heretics or titikas who hold on to a solid existing self. How do we then counterpart this existing nature or holding on to existing nature of self? It is then that you have to study or have to develop a sense of wisdom, of emptiness.
就是说，大智度论里面就是说过，就如果我们真悟了这个万法空性的这种智慧的话，那就
where it says that having faith in the truth of all phenomena being empty is in accordance with the principle of the world. Not having faith in the truth of all phenomena being empty, one will transgress the principle whatever one does. If we do not do so, just as nowadays people would hold on to existentialism, people are really suffering a lot, and you should feel a sense of pity towards them, because they never really had an opportunity to understand the emptiness of self and emptiness of phenomena. Therefore, they suffer within the samsara. The next one talks about fear of samsara suffering. just as the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, what they want is that once they see the suffering of the samsara, then they just want to transcend it. They want then happiness for themselves. How to eradicate this then? How to abandon this? It is through the means of abiding in samadhi. Because when you can abide in samadhi in this samsara, then all the suffering is really nothing. When we are in the state of post-meditation, we'll be able to have a big heart. If we can have a big heart even in a post-meditation state, don't even mention about abiding in samadhi all the time within samsara, then nothing is a problem. The next one then talks about Pratika Buddha who do not then so the previous one who's afraid of samsara is towards the Shravaka practitioners, and the next stanza or the next verse talks about the Pratika Buddhas who then ignore the welfare of fellow sentient beings. They would then perform some luminous penetration in front of very small number of sentient beings, but not really having a great compassion to benefit all sentient beings. So, to counterpart that, then they have to practice great compassion. Once they have once they have the mind of great compassion, then they would naturally to benefit also to have the bodhicitta to benefit sentient beings. So that's the antidote or the means to abandon.
就是相当于也是我们经常讲的那个断中性的或者说是不定中性的
In different sutras, it talks about the ones who have disposition, the ones who have the wrong disposition, the ones who have the uncertain disposition, who are the ones who are the ones which are the heretics and the foolish ones, and the Shravakas and the Pratika Buddhas are the later ones. We don't necessarily have to fit it into those categorizations, however, we can explain in the ways that we just studied in this stanza, which are the 4 ways.
那接下来我们就讲那个，讲什么呢？就是讲这个，以对治啊，就是成佛子，
is the way to become an heir of the victorious one by means of antidote. This verse is extremely important as well, where it says that those whose seed is devotion towards the supreme vehicle, whose mother is analytical wisdom generating the Buddha qualities, whose abode is blissful womb of meditative stability, and whose nurse is compassion and airborne to succeed the Muni. So the child of Chakravartin have to have then the devotion towards supreme devotion, and the wisdom is like the mother. The samadhi or meditative absorption is like the womb within the mother where the child then abode, and the nurse has to take care of the son of Chakravartin. So first, the Chakravartin need to have first the seed from the father, and the mother, which is the wisdom, and then the place to abide, which is the womb within a mother, a womb of a mother, that is meditative stability, and the nurse, which is compassion. So the first antidote is to have devotion towards the supreme vehicle, that is the seed. According to Yumin Yensho's Mind Mirror, it says that the Buddha Dharma is as deep as the ocean. Only with faith one is able to enter, and faith is the basis of the path, the mother of virtues, giving rise to all virtuous roots. The wording is a little bit different than this one, but what it says is that at first you have to have great devotion towards the supreme vehicle, that is Maya. Otherwise, there's no way to then become the heir of victorious one. For Buddhists, I think faith is extremely important. Just as yesterday when we had the class on the three faiths, and when we talk about the three faiths that was taught by Pontsog Rinpoche, I heard many people who then received great blessings from watching that video. And for those of you who've never met Pontsog Rinpoche, it's no difference. It is no difference of you making an auspicious connection to Pontsog Rinpoche. If a person can make an auspicious connection in their dreams, then why can't you make an auspicious connection to the Guru through watching over 1 hour long of video teaching of Pontsog Rinpoche then? And of course, you'll be able to receive the blessings if you have great devotion. I think blessings are so important. When such blessing enters and emerges within your heart and mind, the practice would become very easy. Just as you already have some seed in your heart, and pouring water on top of the seed, then you will have a better chance to let the seed grow and sprout. We've already have the seed of Buddha nature. If we don't have the water of blessings, then maybe in this lifetime we won't have any chance to then awaken this seed of our Buddha nature. I myself believe deeply about the blessings, their body mind, their blessings to the body mind is speech of mind, and their power that could influence me through their blessings.
很重要的。还有一个这个入大乘论当中呢，就是引用一个教程，好像是涅槃经还是什么，就是反正说是佛所说，就是佛经就是说的，说是所作众恶业，能生智慧者，什么亲信大乘法八处众罪根，就是说这个如果我们造了非常严重的罪业的话，能亲近忏悔的因是什么呢？就是信仰大乘文化。如果信仰大乘文化的话呢，那根本上这些罪根。
reference to and faith in the Mahayana teachings, one will be able to eradicate the root of them all. So it is quite important that after you tread on the path and develop great faith towards the supreme vehicle that is Mahayana, then maybe you have done great negative karmas previously. But by generating faith, you will be able to eradicate all the negative karmas according to the Sutra of Luminosity. It says that if you abide in the truth, then you'll be able to eradicate all the negative roots that you've accumulated in the past. So, if we have devotion, then we've already have seed. Without seed, how can you get sprouts and flowers and fruits? So that's the first one. You have to first have devotion, to have the seed. And the second one talks about the wisdom of understanding, of realize the selflessness and emptiness of phenomena. So you have the wisdom is the mother. If you have the seed but not the mother, then you won't be able to have the child. I know many Buddhists who want to see the nature of, see their Buddha nature, who want to attain realization and enlightenment. But if you don't have any wisdom, if you have a seed but not a mother, then the child cannot be born. But you can't. The modern technology of cloning is not really considered a real birth, a genuine birth. The next one talks about the womb. A child cannot be born if he was not then stayed in the womb. So the womb is the meditative stability. Without meditative stability, then you won't be able to then see the Buddha nature. So you have to maintain such stability. The next one is nurse. That is compassion. Shakyamuni Buddha had 4 nurses, out of which 2 of them give him milk and 2 give him who bathed him, 2 give them to give him clothing, and 2 who helped him to grow up in terms of other aspects. So 8 nurses in total, according to the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha. Without nurse, that is compassion, we won't be able to help the sentient beings. In Madhyamika Avatara, it talked about how compassion is extremely important from the beginning and the middle and the end. The Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, when they see the sentient beings are suffering, they don't really do anything about it. But when a compassionate Buddhist, compassionate Mahayana Buddhists see sentient beings suffering, they feel heartbroken, just as a mother upon seeing her only child suffering from illness and suffering, then she can't bear the pain. So just like that, the Mahayana practitioners, they feel very heartbroken and unable to bear the pain of how other sentient beings bear their pain. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, where it says that comprehending the host of beings, to be confused by ignorance and delusions skillfully, you assume boundless forms to liberate sentient beings. Because the sentient beings have different habitual patterns and different tendencies. Therefore, the Buddha would manifest in different forms and different ways to benefit the sentient being. The tendencies, habitual patterns of sentient beings are very different. Therefore, we have to then manifest it in different ways and use skillful means to benefit them. That is the power of compassion. In Buddhism, we talk about compassion. And once you have compassion, everything's simple. When you don't have compassion, then everything is extremely difficult. So we've already talked about the essence, and we've talked about the cause. The next one, we'll just talk about one more stanza. The next one talk about the result and function. The first one is the one that which is to be attained, and the means of attain. And what causes attainment, where it says that the fruit is perfection of qualities, or purity, self, happiness, and permanence. Weariness of suffering, longing to attain peace, and devotion towards this aim are the function. Over here, it talks about purity, self, happiness, and permanence. Those are originally, we talk about them in a way that is the perverted way of looking at our existence, perverted way of taking purity, taking impure as pure, and taking the non-existence of self as existent. But over here, in fact, all these four talks about the purity paramita, self paramita, happiness paramita, and permanence paramita. The first one, that is purity paramita, that transcends pure and impure. And the second one, the paramita of self, that transcends self and selflessness. And third one, the happiness paramita, transcends happiness and unhappiness. And the fourth one talks about the permanence paramita, that transcends permanence and impermanence. According to the unsurpassed meaning of the Buddha Sutra as well as the Srimala Sutra, it both talked about these four paramitas. In the previous sutra, it talked about it step by step, systematically, or rather step by step, all the way from the mundane being to the to Buddhahood, how these four paramitas are then set forth, or how they are in different stages. When people ask you, what's the fruition of Buddha nature? Then you can tell them it is a purity paramita, self paramita, happiness paramita, and permanence paramita. Paramita over here means to the other shore. The next one then says that awareness of suffering, longing to attain peace, and devotion towards the aim are the function. How then can you attain it, or what causes such attainment? The first one is to give rise to the renunciation mind. but it's unlike how people feel that. But it's just as how some people feel, I'm really tired of this world and my family because I just quarreled with them. Without Buddha nature, how would you feel that? How would you feel that you don't like pain and want to renounce from suffering of samsara? The next one talks about the next one talks about longing and pursuing to attain the ultimate happiness from nirvana, just as how you long for Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, and so on. And how you long to attain this is also derived from your Buddha nature. The third one talks about the aspiration. In our causal stage, it doesn't matter if we are chanting the aspiration of Shamadabhadra or we make good aspirations, all these kind of aspirations are also the function of Buddha nature. Over here, when we talk about purity, self, happiness, and permanence, if you understand it in the way that is a perverted way, how we take the impure as pure and so on, then that's wrong. So it shows that it's quite important to understand different words in different contexts. Therefore, it's quite important to study systematically, to continuously to delve into the ocean of Dharma and study and contemplate and practice. Otherwise, you are taking it all wrong. That would be quite quite laughable. How sentient beings long for happiness and want to get rid of suffering. This is also an aspect of Buddha nature. So happiness included the kind of supreme happiness or the nirvana, or just the temporary happiness. Similarly, all the other sentient beings, such as animals, they all have such longing and such pursuit. In such a way, that's how we should understand Uttara Tantra Shastra. And we'll stop here today. Next class, next Uttara Tantra Shastra, in fact, we have added Korean translations. We'll have the simultaneous Korean language translation as well.